Hello.
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 Good afternoon. We're going to get started in just a minute.
I have a question. How do I put this on my computer? I'm sitting here with the phone.
If you go to your email and click on the link that I sent you.
Well, you know, that didn't show up in my Mac. I'll try it. All right. While you guys do your thing, I'll try.
Okay.
I don't want to lose this though, but I've never Zoomed before. Let me just try something. There. Yeah, we're here, but it's that's all right. I'll just watch it on the phone. I don't understand. Oh, wait a minute. What's this? No.
I am going to ask everyone to use the mute function at the bottom of their screen.
Oh, I know how to do that. I know how to do it.
Just so that way, once Stephanie is on, she is the only voice we hear.
The mute button on what did you say? On the phone?
Towards the bottom of your screen. There's a little microphone and it says mute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know where that is, but it's not. This is not on my computer, so that's all right. My phone doesn't have a mute button, does it? So I'll just put it on church. Is that mute?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Rebecca, can you hear me?
I can.
I'm bummer. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Where's the mute button? Oh, yeah, there it is.
Of everyone's screen, regardless of what device they're on. You may have to swipe up if you're on your phone.
I don't know how to get I mean, the link came into on my phone, but it never went to the. Oh. Oh.
Rebecca?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to, oh, there's a mute button here. Let me try
have
this.
Everyone.
Okay, well, if that isn't working, I'm just going to ask everyone to just hold off. I'm going to do a quick intro here, and then we're going to get started because I think we have a fair amount of people signed on at this point. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Rebecca Banas. I am the Director of Outreach Marketing and Events for Wild Care Cape Cod. We are thrilled to have you at our first ever virtual presentation. And today's presentation is called Life in an Egg. So a few things to go over before we get started. If you are able to, we are asking everyone to use the mute function at the bottom of their screen or the bottom of their phone. If you have questions during this presentation, please use the chat function. Stephanie is going to go through slides and probably answer a lot of your questions as we go. But if you could,
here, I hope not. Can they?
I don't know.
Oh, let's see.
I'm still hearing a couple of voices, so if we can mute our sound. But again, Stephanie is going to get started in just a moment. I did want to remind everyone that we are offering this programming free of charge. If you are able to and can give a donation, I'm going to be sharing that link with you now through the chat function and also at the end of this presentation. We know these are troubling times, but that is how Wild Care provides care for our wild neighbors throughout the year. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our Executive Director, Stephanie Ellis, with her presentation of Life in the Egg.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me, Rebecca?
Hi.
I am going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Hopefully it will work. Let's see. Here we go. We've never done this before, you guys, so thank you so much. And thank you for your patience. I'm very excited about this, and hopefully everything will work as planned.
It's not
Okay.
working. I'm just gonna listen.
So everyone should be able to see my screen now. Okay. Rebecca, can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. So this is one of my most favorite talks to give. I absolutely love birds. I've been studying birds for the last 18 years of my life. Very exciting topic, and I'm glad to share it with all of you. These beautiful photos are an American robin and the classic blue robin eggs in a robin nest. So we're first going to talk about some avian reproductive anatomy. And we will also be talking about bird copulation. So I will keep it clean in case there are any children in the audience, I promise. But here is an illustration of a female bird reproductive system. And I think you should be able to see my little cursor on the screen, which will be helpful. But something that's really interesting about birds is that they only have one ovary, and they only have one oviduct for producing eggs. And the reason that birds only have one ovary is because imagine the problem of them simultaneously producing 2 eggs at once. You know, it's metabolically and physically challenging enough to produce 1 egg, but if they were producing 2, that would probably keep birds grounded. They would be too heavy and cause problems laying more than 1 egg at a time. And so in a few slides, we're going to talk about exactly how the egg forms when it goes through this process. But for now, this is the ovary. If you see all these little grape-like clusters, those are actually the eggs, which contain the yolk. And then these birds, these eggs actually pop out into the oviduct from here. We're going to talk about that in detail. But just importantly, these little clusters, these are eggs which contain yolks, which is basically the life source for the chick developing in the egg. These 3 strange looking features are the avian kidneys. So unlike us, we have 1 kidney on each side. Birds have 3 lobed kidneys on both sides. You also see birds have it's like a urethra, the ureter, which is basically where the fluid comes from the kidneys out into the cloaca. We're going to talk about that more also because birds do not pee like humans do. I'd also like to point out that this here is the cloaca. So this is basically the bum of the bird, and this is where everything comes out. So the urine portion comes out, the feces come out of here, and also eggs come out of this area. And this is where birds mate. So this is where there would be semen coming into the bird's oviduct. It's really, I love this drawing. It's beautiful. It's a work of art, and it's so absolutely fascinating. This is a pigeon, and so this is representing the female rock dove, basically their reproductive anatomy. Oops. So I apologize for the graphic image, but I wanted to show you guys what this looks like in real life. Remember those little grape-like clusters on the ovary? These are the actual eggs. And you can't see it here, but you know, there'd be an oviduct running through here. These are the top of the 3 lobed kidneys. And this is fascinating. This was a bird who did not survive. And I did a necropsy, and I could see that she had some very ripe eggs there, which were probably fertilized and ready to pop out into the oviduct, where they then go through the process of getting all of their membranes and their eggshells. So that's a photo of a red-tailed hawk. Okay, So here is the male avian reproductive tract, again from pigeons. And by the way, these illustrations are from the most awesome book on the planet. It's called The Manual of Ornithology by Procter and Noble. And I highly recommend it. It's very simple illustrations and very easy to understand descriptions of what happens in the body. So look at this. So these are the 3 lobed kidneys on either side. And these are the testes. And so yes, birds do have testes like mammals. It's very much different than mammals, and I'll explain. But you can see here on this side, there's an enlarged testes. And that is because when birds go into reproductive condition, hormones are raging and their testes swell over 100 times their natural size, which is really extraordinary because when you think about the life of birds, most birds on this planet are flighted. So to have huge testes that are like the size of your head might pose, you would think would pose a problem when birds are trying to fly. But they've adapted to this. And then after the breeding season, they shrink down to normal size. So look at this, this is so cool. So imagine, oops, I'm going to, if you guys could mute, I thought I muted everyone. I may have not. Let me just try again. Mute all, continue. Okay. So, oops, back to my photo. This is fascinating in birds. Do you see this coming from the testes, this squiggly tube? Okay, so this is the vas deferens. Just like mammals, this is how sperm is transferred, excuse me, from the testicles. But interestingly enough, you know, birds, their body temperature is so high. Like hummingbirds, we're talking a body temperature, a resting body temperature over 103 degrees. So if they had sperm storage way up here in their body over their kidneys, the sperm would probably die because that body temperature is totally preclusive. Sperm can't survive in these really high temperatures. So instead, the sperm is created, is transferred down the vas deferens, and birds actually have their real testes, if you will, is right here in the cloaca. So, and I'm going to show you a picture of that because I think it's fascinating. It's actually, I think, 4 to 10 degrees cooler in this section of the body to store sperm than it is to store them up here in the actual testes. So this is really important. Here's what it looks like. So this is a photo from a bird banding lab that I worked with in San Francisco Bay. And a male that is in prime condition and he's filled with sperm and his testicles are enlarged. This is what it looks like from the outside. It's very bizarre, right? It almost looks like a tumor. But this would tell us, for example, that this bird in the hand is very much in prime breeding condition. And so this is normal. You would not see this on a bird flying around. They wouldn't have this hanging out. Okay, this is a bird in the hand, and you can see exactly what's going on in their reproductive lives. It's pretty fascinating. I want to mention renal portal system. So birds are fascinating. Something that has been carried over from their reptilian ancestors is a renal portal system, which basically means that blood flow in the lower half of the body goes through the kidneys. So for us, rehabilitating birds, we almost never would inject them in their legs because that medication would go directly through this renal portal system, meaning it goes directly through the kidneys before it circulates to other parts of the body, which also means you could give a toxic dose of a medication. And so we don't generally give birds injections in the lower half of the body. So they share this with amphibians, fish, and reptiles. I believe no living mammals have a renal portal system. I'll have to look that up, don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. So another interesting thing I wrote here, vasectomy. it's fascinating. You know, people sometimes have chicks that they think are hens, which then develop into roosters. And there's been some evidence to show that a vasectomy will temporarily cease roosters from crowing. I worked for a center in South Weymouth where we did a vasectomy on the rooster and he no longer crowed. However, hormones do continue to circulate in the body, and some birds are able to even store sperm for months at a time. So it might only halt the crowing temporarily. I just had to throw that in there because it's fascinating. Yes, you can do a vasectomy on a bird. Okay, so let's talk about bird copulation. So ornithology is the study of birds, ornith meaning birds, and these are two common terms, mating. And I have to keep this clean because of children in the audience, but if you add a P onto the front of this word, that is what we're going to talk about right now. So these are two common terms, mating. Love this photo. And what's fascinating about birds is, remember the cloaca that I showed you, which is basically the bird's, the bum? Most birds do engage in what's called a cloacal kiss. So they literally, it's just a touching of the two cloacas. And it's very quick. For those of you who have seen avian copulation, most of the time it's the birds on the back, then they're gone. It's very, very fast. And there's this quick sperm transfer. And I'm just gonna go back. I don't wanna make anyone dizzy, but so the cloaca, here I am pointing at my screen as though you guys can see it. I have to use my cursor, sorry about that. This cloaca will sort of like evert a little bit so then they can touch. So it's like a simple kiss. So these birds are mating. They'll mate, some birds will mate hundreds of times during the course of a clutch of eggs. It depends on the species. And then, I love this slide so much. This is Nancy Orb, and she's local. And so some birds are cute. These birds are very cute. Male balanced precariously on the female. Piping plover, some people call them plover, saying that it rhymes with lover. And some people prefer to call them plovers. I prefer plover rhymes with lover, because look at these two. Is there anything cuter than this? So some birds are cute, but some birds are actually very well endowed. So I don't have pictures in the presentation, but while most birds do the cloacal kiss, some birds actually have a phallus, which is a type of penis. It gets filled with lymph fluid, and in the case of ostriches, they actually have the largest phallus. When it's erect with lymph fluid, it's 15.7 inches long and brilliantly red. It's quite the sight from what I understand. I've never seen one, you guys. But it's interesting, some recent studies have looked at why some birds would have a phallus and why the others don't need it. They just do the cloacal kiss. Well, birds that typically have a phallus are in the waterfowl family, and it's a corkscrew shape. And for the waterfowl, it makes sense because most of those species mate in the water. And if you're in the water and you're doing this, you might lose sperm transfer along the way. So waterfowl have developed a phallus which can actually penetrate the female so that there is transmission of sperm. So it's not lost in the water. So you're like, okay, that's great. So ostriches don't mate in the water. So why the heck do they have a gigantic phallus? Well, the reason they have a phallus is because ostriches are extremely promiscuous, and males will take over 4 females. They can be aggressive during mating. And so this phallus is thought to ensure that there is insemination in females, even when the female is not willing. I apologize for this terrible topic. Consent is sexy, sexier than ever. And so someone needs to talk to these ostriches. But anyway, that's why they have a phallus, is because they're promiscuous. Polygamous, I believe, refers to their mating strategies. I'm happy to report that the males do actually incubate the eggs, and they are paternal in some ways. So that's why waterfowl and ostriches have phalluses. It's so fascinating. Okay, so here, I love this slide. These are rock pigeons engaging in a courtship display. But I especially love this illustration here on the right. I'm just gonna move this over for a minute. Oops. Oh, there we go. Okay. So remember I showed you the ovary and the grape-like cluster of eggs. And then this is the oviduct. And look at this, in most birds, you could actually find a vestigial right oviduct. So from, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago when birds millions of years ago when birds evolved from reptiles and possibly had 2 oviducts, you can actually, in some species, find vestigial right oviduct, but in most birds, it's not functional. Okay, so here is the ovary with the eggs. So what happens is when birds mate, the sperm is transferred, up the oviduct and fertilizes the eggs right here at the ovary. The ripe eggs actually pop out into, it's called the infundibulum. And then it would be 1 egg at a time. And then the eggs proceed through the oviduct in usually a 24-hour period. It really depends on the species, honestly, because for some birds, larger birds especially, it takes them longer to produce an egg. But let's say a typical hen egg, the egg pops out, which is basically a yolk, okay? And then it goes through the magnum region and it starts to acquire more fluids. The whites and the clear components that you see when you crack open your chicken eggs, these all have very important values, which we're going to talk about. But those fluids are added here. Then the egg passes through this isthmus region, and the shell membranes start to be deposited. Okay, and so usually, you know, it pops into here. It will take about 30 minutes to drop down into the magnum region. It starts getting all the liquid added to the yolk in the egg. That's usually about 3 hours. Another 4 hours or so here, getting shell membranes. And then where the egg takes the most time is in the actual uterus. And this is where it gets its outer hard calcified shell, which we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about what that is composed of. This is also where pigments are added onto the egg. So you can see this shows like an arrow where the egg is rotating. It really depends on the species, genetics, as to how quickly or not that egg is going to turn in the uterus, and how quickly or not pigment will be squirted out to basically color the egg. So, you know, bird eggs look very different depending on the species, and most bird eggs are very well camouflaged to match the bird's environment. So depending on genetics, you know, if it's a bird that lays spotted eggs, that usually indicates that it's taking slower time turning in the uterus region, and pigment is spitting out at a slower rate, if that makes sense. For birds that have like a scrawled appearance on their eggs, lines, then the pigment is spitting out consistently while the egg is moving slowly, causing a scrawling effect. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm grossly oversimplifying it, but just so you know, there's a lot of genetics involved there, depending on the species and the eggs being camouflaged for that bird's environment. It's absolutely fascinating. So 24 hours to lay an egg. So whenever I give this presentation, people usually ask me, why is it that sometimes I'll crack open my breakfast egg and there's 2 yolks in it? Like, how the heck did that happen? You just told me that birds can't lay 2 eggs at once. Well, guess what? This is just a glitch in ovulation. You can still eat those eggs. They're fine. But remember that ovary, and I told you 1 egg or 1 yolk pops out at a time. It just so happened that 2 popped out at once, and then go through the entire process where they get the egg membranes, the shell, and then you crack it open at your breakfast table and it looks like this. Pretty fascinating. Oops. Okay, so now we're going to start to talk about life in the egg. So now you know how the eggs are formed. We're going to talk about how the chick actually develops from all of that. I first have to start with my most favorite quote on the planet. I think that if required on pain of death to name instantly the most perfect thing in the universe, I should risk my fate on a bird's egg. And the reason I love this quote is because just look at this photo here to the right. Eggs, it's such a delicate, fine matrix. It's this porous microstructure which allows the chick that's developing in it to breathe passively. So it's this delicate thing. You know, when we think of eggs, we think we could crush it with our fingertips. This delicate, delicate thing that is actually strong enough that the parents can incubate it for extended periods of time, yet fragile and delicate enough that a chick can actually break out of it. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? So the durability there is just extraordinary, and there's nothing else like an egg. So this delicate balance that I'm telling you about, I love this photo. It's a black-necked stilt. What a beautiful, beautiful egg. Great example of camouflage. These birds nest in pickleweed marsh habitat. This was from San Francisco Bay, different colors of greens and browns, and blends in with the pickleweed, which is right here. The eggshell is this porous microstructure. It's calcium carbonate, collagen, crystalline calcite. It has a protein cuticle. And interestingly enough, so birds are so metabolically demanding on the female bird that produces them. Not only are they, you know, you have this thing developing inside of your body that would be developing for a couple of days, if not weeks, depending on the bird. But most female birds actually transfer some of their own bone calcium to the eggs, okay? Up to 12% in some cases of their own bone calcium. So their bones become less dense, which means that they need to be eating really well to replenish their resources that are now being diverted to creating the eggs. And there's so much more we could say about this if I had time. Because when you think about DDT and how it was banned in the 70s after it nearly decimated eagle and osprey populations in the Northeast, well, part of the problem with DDT was that it interfered with this perfect structure of an eggshell. So that when adult osprey and eagles were sitting on their eggs, they collapsed. They were crushable. And so there were no chicks. There was almost complete loss of chicks. So I love that example because it just goes to show you, you know, you think, oh, a little bit of calcium, some fibers, piece of cake. It's the most perfect balance, rigid yet flexible. Okay, so the next thing you need to know before we talk about the babies and the eggs is that most female birds, sometimes the males, develop a brood patch. And this is basically, look at this, it looks like a bad blister, right? It's a vascularized area on the abdomen and breast of a bird where they actually lose feathers related to hormones. They lose feathers so that they can then sit on the egg and directly transfer heat to the eggs from their body. Because imagine bird feathers are like the most perfect insulators. So if you're just sitting on eggs, like with your feathers, it's not going to transfer heat because your feathers are trapping all the heat against your body. So birds, when we get birds at wild care in the summer, we always look for brood patches because that also tells us that these birds have young, and we try to get them back out even more quickly because they have young to take care of. Okay, so this is a bird. This would be its head because that looks like the abdomen, and that's the breast. Not all birds incubate the same way, of course. There's like almost 10,000 species of birds in the world, and most of them do similar things, but some do not. And so birds in this family, which is basically, the family is Pelicanidae, which is the boobies, the cormorants, the anhingas, the frigate birds. They have these massive webbed feet, super vascular, warm feet. And so they actually incubate eggs on their feet. So they don't develop brood patches. The eggs are on their feet, some of the species under their feet. And then they sit down, and it's like a little incubator there under their delicate feet. Again, fascinating, because this is a giant bird, you guys. And to think about them, you know, they're quite awkward on land. So for me to think about them having eggs under their feet is like somewhat frightening. But they're very, very successful at it. Such beautiful, beautiful birds. Those are nice, big, warm feet, you guys. If I was a baby bird, I'd like to be incubated under those feet. Okay, now you understand everything that's happening. So let's talk about the baby inside of the egg. Okay, so in an egg, you have the egg yolk, okay? And I'm gonna also show you some pictures of what your good old-fashioned chicken egg from the grocery store looks like inside. You have a yolk, and on top of the yolk, I think I might switch to it now. This is a chicken egg from the grocery store, so not fertilized. See this little white spot here? That is where the chick develops from, if you can imagine that. If this was brown, like if I got this from a friend's farm and they had roosters and it was brown, that would tell me that it is actually fertilized. And that's where the chick will develop from. So that's called a blastodisc when it's not fertilized. When it's fertilized, it's called a blastoderm. Anyway, the other interesting thing about eggs is, so the chick develops on top of the yolk. There are these tiny spring-like strings on the side of your eggs. I'm going to show you a picture of that. And they're attached to inner membranes on either side of the egg. And the reason for this is, you all know that parent birds rotate their eggs in the nest. And the reason they do this is because they want to make sure that heat is being distributed throughout the egg, so that there's consistent development for the chick. But also, if a chick sits too long in the egg in one space, they can start to dry out and adhere to the linings of the shell. So these little spring-like structures, can you see this white here? They're not stretched out, unfortunately, but if you crack open a chicken egg tomorrow and look at it, you'll see these little spring-like structures. Basically, the parents would be turning the egg, and the yolk, the chick always stays on top of the yolk. It's like a, someone compared it to, it's a difference in viscosity of the different components of the egg, that no matter where they turn it, the chick's always going to be on top. And you're going to see why that is critically important as well. There's also on the blunt side of the egg an airspace, and we will talk about why that's important, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Here's what my eggs sometimes look like in the morning. They're smiling back at me. This one looked like a dog. Okay, so this yolk, you know, yolks are so big and we all love them and we think, look, that yolks are delicious for those who eat it. They're also the sustaining life force and food source for the chick developing within the egg. So here we go. Aliens, they look like aliens. Here's the egg at another view. So that little blastodisc that I showed you, the little white spot, the chick starts developing, and this is the yolk. So the yolk actually gets absorbed into their system and becomes their stomach. It's an early analog for their stomach. It's really fascinating. When chicks hatch, they have a little umbilical cord, and this yolk is fully absorbed into their stomach. So chicks are also surrounded by amniotic fluid, much like a human baby. And this is temperature regulation, and it's water and salts. So something fascinating here, if you see this little sac, the allantois sac, this is the poop sac. So this is basically what becomes their intestines. Okay, so birds in the egg, or let me back up. Birds don't have bladders. And the reason for that is, first of all, imagine in this egg, if this bird had a bladder, it would take up a ton of space in the egg. Also, bladders, for mammals, for example, we need to drink a ton of water to flush out our kidneys. And then we have a bladder. And then when it gets filled, we go to the bathroom. Birds can't have a bladder because they wouldn't be able to fly. It would weight them down. Also, not having a bladder means that they don't have to drink quite as much water. Okay, so instead, birds actually secrete from their kidneys something called uric acid. And you guys have all seen this. For the poop on your car, there's like the dark portion and then there's the light portion. The light portion is the creamy stuff that comes from the kidneys. And it's not, it's not toxic. Like the ammonia in our bladder would quickly reach toxic levels here inside this contained environment, if that makes sense. So instead, they're secreting this sort of non-toxic waste, much more solid, does not take up a lot of space in the egg, and is not harmful to the developing embryo. And then when birds go to the bathroom, it comes out of that cloaca, which I told you is sort of the hole for where everything happens. Another cool thing that most people don't know is that when this baby is in the egg, it is not breathing with its lungs. It's breathing through passive respiration. All these little holes indicate like a porous environment, and there's a passive exchange of oxygen for carbon dioxide. So that chick is just breathing passively. It does not use its lungs until just before it hatches. Notice this air cell again, because we're going to talk about that. Okay, so here we go. Here's another view. So this is the yolk that I've been talking about. It's all vascular because, again, remember I said it's going to be their stomach, basically. So they're absorbing it into their body throughout their entire time in the egg. He's in his amniotic fluid. He looks like E.T., except he's a bird. This is all vascular membranes, porous. There's a passive exchange for oxygen and carbon dioxide. And then there's this air cell, and the air cell, as the chick develops, starts to get bigger. And the reason for that is, look at this bird now. Here's a chick that's ready to hatch. It's completely filled the egg, okay? It's in this hatching position, which I will show you, where they sort of tuck one wing in and tuck one leg up around the yolk. And the very first thing they're gonna do before they start hatching is peck into this airspace and breathe with their lungs for the very first time. It's outstanding, you guys. I just got goosebumps, no pun intended, or chicken bumps. They breathe with their lungs for the first time. And this is also why it's critically important when we incubate eggs at WildCare. You never, ever, ever want to have the pointed end facing up. Because guess what? That means you have the chick on its head. And so when it pecks into that airspace for the first time, all the fluids are going to go through it. He's going to breathe them in and he's going to drown. So you would notice if you were to look at a bird's nest really closely, the eggs are always at a slightly upward tilt on the blunt egg, the blunt end. And that is totally intentional. So he pecks through this airspace, okay? And then the next thing the bird has to do is peck through the actual shell. And I will tell you, you know, this process is usually at least a 24-hour process. It is the most challenging life experience in a bird's entire life. That's what the scientists say. And for those of you who have seen chicks hatch, I wonder how anything can even hatch. It's such a, excuse me, a strenuous process. I just wanted to show you, those springs that I was talking about that are attached to either side of the shell and allow the parents to rotate the eggs. That's what they look like. And here is that air cell that the chick breaks into. Can everyone see that? I want you tomorrow, if you're eating eggs in the morning, I want you to crack open your yolk, look for this blasto disc, look for these strings, okay? And I want you to look at the blunt end of the egg for the airspace. And your chicken eggs in the store are not going to be fertilized, so you don't have to worry. So these are just some more pictures showing you what I've just detailed. 5 days, 10 days, 15 days. As the chick gets bigger, look at the airspace. Small, bigger, big, huge. He gets into this tucking position. And the reason this position is important is because, see how it allows his beak? It allows his beak to start chipping away at the egg after he's pecked through the airspace. And it allows his little ankles to start banging the egg on the other side. This is important because most birds, do I have a picture? I think I do. So if you find a bird egg and you want to know if it hatched or if it was eaten, bird eggs never hatch like from the blunt end or from the pointed end. They are banging and pecking, and they almost always crack the eggs in half. Okay, so if you find an egg and it just has one little hole eaten out of it, unfortunately, predators, that was not the baby. Predators got into that nest. I'll show you pictures of what hatched eggs look like. So I realize that this is gross, but again, just photos of the incredible development. And I have a video that I'm going to show you. I think I should show you at the end just in case there's technical difficulties, but I have a video of what a chick looks like inside of its egg. Because in some cases, you can actually see if the egg shell is light enough in color, you can actually see movement when you're candling the eggs. This is just another chart of babies developing in an egg. So some ways that we can tell what's happening in an egg. You know, we do get eggs at Wild Care that people will bring to us from abandoned nests or eggs that they've found on the ground. And so we either float them or candle them. Candling being the process, which I'm going to show you in the video at the end, of shining a bright light through the egg so that you can look at the egg and see what stage of development it's in. There's also a flotation method where you can put eggs in distilled water. And you might think, oh my God, put an egg in water, isn't it going to drown? Well, remember I was saying that it's that calcium and fibrous microstructure. That microstructure, in a hen's egg, there's over 7,500 pores. But eggs can be put in water for very short periods of time, and the water is not going to seep in. You know, if I left an egg in the water, then yes, that microstructure is eventually, the water is going to come in and they're going to drown. But no, eggs are very tolerant of having water on them for short periods of time. So you can use this flotation method, and depending on the developmental stage in the egg will float at a certain angle. We don't have to get into it in great detail here, but basically, you know how I was saying the airspace gets bigger as the chick develops? Well, that means, you know, you have a tiny airspace, and as it gets bigger, you have a lot of air there that's going to cause the egg to rotate upward. Okay? And so that's something that helps us. It's not foolproof by any means. There's a lot of guesswork, but sometimes when we're just handed eggs, we can't see through them. We have no idea what's going on in them. We do the flotation method. Rebecca, will you remind me at the end to show them that amazing video? Okay. So I was saying that hatching out of an egg is the most stressful event in a bird's life. Chicks actually develop a hatching muscle, which then gets absorbed and becomes just a normal part of their musculature in their neck. They need this muscle because they might be pecking at the shell for over 24 hours trying to get out. So hatching muscle, this is a baby woodcock. What a beautiful, beautiful creature. They're a type of shorebird, a moist woodland shorebird. So this is an example. I took this photo many years ago, great black-backed gull pipping, which is the process of pecking the egg, and you can just see the beak coming out and the chick is chipping away. Most birds have some type of an egg tooth, which is this tiny little calcified protrusion on their bill, which allows them to chip away at the egg. In some species, that egg tooth falls off. Some species, they just absorb it. So another way to tell if eggs had hatched or if they were eaten by predators, notice how I said that most eggs hatch, you know, down the middle. And so there, see how there's a crack here, crack here. This one almost looks more near the top, but it would have, I know that these hatch because I hatched them. Almost always after a hatch, the membranes are curled inward. A lot of times with predation, there's holes in really weird places and the membranes are curled outward. Okay. I just had to show you a couple of eggs because eggs are just so beautiful and in my opinion, works of art. Not only are eggs functional and the most perfect things on the planet, but they're also fabulous, fabulous in terms of being camouflaged and shaped to benefit the type of nesting behavior of the bird. So birds like this murre, cormorants, woodpeckers, thrushes, shorebirds, they all have different shapes to their egg depending on where they nest. I love this example. This is a common murre. This is how varied their eggs can be depending on the habitats and the range of where they nest. And so these eggs basically would match the environment they're nesting in. But these little birds nest on coastal cliffs. And so if you can imagine nesting on a tiny little shelf where there's barely room to move, and you've got these eggs and you've got to incubate them, the eggs are very much sort of top shaped. We call it pyriform. And that's because if an egg starts to roll, because you're on a cliff, it will automatically roll like in a circle, like a top, if that makes sense. So it has this very large blunt end and then this very pointed end, and that causes eggs to roll in circles instead of just rolling off your cliff. So it seems like, oh God, it's so pretty and we just admire it as art, but it's super functional. There's a reason for every bird egg shape and every bird egg color. Shorebirds also lay top-shaped eggs. Thrushes tend to lay blue eggs. And you would think, why the heck would they lay blue eggs? Like, how is that camouflaged? But supposedly, if you're an aerial predator looking down at a tree, supposedly blue eggs are interpreted as basically spaces in the vegetation, which sort of makes sense to me. So instead of seeing them as a distinct object that is oval, it's interpreted as just a space in the vegetation, a clear space. So it sort of makes sense. A lot of cavity nesters have very plain eggs, and that's because they don't need the camouflage for their eggs because they're nesting within a cavity where their eggs won't be seen. So these are, actually, I think these were Buick's wren. I can't remember entirely. I think these were chickadee and these were bluebird. So again, cavity nesters, a lot of the cavity nesters have round eggs because they don't have to worry about them rolling off of cliffs. They're in a cavity like a tree or a nest box. And so shape isn't as much of a concern. This is fascinating, chimney swifts. They're one of my most favorite species. They're in massive decline throughout their range in the United States due to, unfortunately, pesticides and the loss of aerial insects, but also the loss of natural dwellings for nesting. Historically, these birds would nest in caves and rocky crevices, and also trees. Unfortunately, with the loss of those types of environments, they've taken to nesting in chimneys, which I think is wonderful. But more and more of us cover our chimneys, you know, to prevent other animals from getting in. And so chimneys have really suffered a decline in their populations because there's nowhere to nest. But my point of talking about them is this is a bird, this would be in a chimney or a chimney box. And look at the shape. First of all, they're white, no need for camouflage because this bird is going to be within a dwelling. But this is a precarious nest. It's glued together by their saliva and stuck to the wall of the chimney or the rocky crevice or the large tree. And so they don't need to be camouflaged, but they need that top shape so that they don't roll off. Fascinating. Okay, just a few egg facts. It takes most species 24 to 48 hours to produce an egg. But some species, some larger species, the ratites, which are basically the ostrich, rhea, emu, big birds, penguins and raptors, it can take them 4 to 8 days to produce a single egg. And imagine, I've talked about how metabolically challenging that is. It also makes me sad when I think about, you know, the investment that has been, the bird has made, and then we find a nest somewhere that we don't want and we dispose of it. There's been a huge metabolic and physical investment in that set of eggs, aside from behavioral investment from the parents. So boobies and hornbills, takes them 7 days to produce an egg. Kiwis, you all know the kiwis, most commonly the kiwis of New Zealand, who are ground-dwelling, bizarre and amazing birds. They lay, I believe, the biggest egg. No, not the biggest egg, because the ostrich does. Maybe the second to biggest egg on the planet. 2 500-gram eggs. It takes them 4 weeks to produce these eggs. And the eggs actually take up about 25% of the female's body mass. If you ever have a chance to Google X-ray of a kiwi with producing an egg, I mean, the egg takes up the entire body cavity. I don't know how they do it. Ostriches lay 1,900-gram eggs, and then the hummingbirds on the other end of the scale with their tiny, tiny little eggs that weigh like less than a paper clip. By the way, this picture, this is a California gull nest, and I was doing a nest survey in San Francisco Bay. In this particular area, there were over 20,000 California gulls nesting, and they tend to put interesting items in their nests. Rubber boots, Barbie dolls, plastic balls, but this was the coolest. I actually found this bird had a bunch of French fries in his nest. I thought it was so amazing. Gulls are awesome. The quintessential gull. I have, let's see. I know we're at time. I have a few more slides. And then we will, and then I'm going to answer some questions and show you that beautiful video. I just wanted to talk about the types of avian development because not every bird is at the same type of development when they hatch out of the egg. These are wrens, for example. This is a Carolina wren. And these birds, look at them, naked, blind, and helpless. This is an American robin. So we refer to this as an altricial baby. This means they have a short time in the egg. Incubation for robins is usually 12 to 14 days. When they hatch, they are naked, blind, and completely helpless. They depend 100% on the parents for warmth, food, and protection. Okay, These are what American robin nestlings look like. And then this is an American robin fledgling. I love this one on the right. He's just fat and content. Here's an example of the very quick development of an altricial bird. Okay, so this is they hatch naked, blind, and helpless. These are dark-eyed juncos, but this is the Oregon junco from the West Coast. So here's eggs in the nest. Here's day 1. Day 2, the little bobbleheads are getting stronger. They're able to pick up their heads. They're able to beg for food. They don't have much feathering yet, a little bit of down. Look at this. Look at the difference between day 2 and day 3. They're already getting pin feathers on their wings. More feathers are coming in on the head. Day 4, they're almost starting to look like birds. Day 5, more pin feathers starting to sprout. Well, I skipped 2 days there, but from day 5 to day 7 is extraordinary. Look at the feathers coming in on the back, the little white feathers on their outer tail. Day 7 to 10, they now look like birds and they're almost ready to leave the nest. Day 12, they're gone. So I love to show this also because I can't tell you how many people call us and say, I have a house finch and it's on the wreath on my door and like I want it to go away. And I say, how long has she been on the eggs? Oh, she's been on the eggs for a week. Well, guess what? They only incubate babies are only in the nest for another 12 days. So instead of causing so much stress by bringing us babies that we have to care for every 20 minutes, we would love if you could leave them in their location and let them do their thing. And then as soon as they're done, you can remove the nest and discourage them from coming back. As you just saw, super quick process, right? I mean, they grow up and they fledge in no time. Songbirds are easy. So that's a junco. An example of precocial development is these, precocial birds are basically birds that hatch, dry off, leave the nest, and eat on their own. So all mom has to do, or mom and dad, depending on the species, is basically keep them warm and show them where the food is. So mallard ducklings, they have deadbeat dads. There's no parental care from dad. He's not even around if you're talking about mallards. So it's mom, the chicks hatch, they dry off, they follow mom. She brings them to water, she broods them to keep them warm, and they eat all on their own. Other examples aside from the waterfowl, gallinaceous birds, these are like the rails, you know, soras and moorhen, stuff like that, grebes and rails. And then the megapodes, you guys, I had to put this example in there. I think it's the only bird in the world that does not even incubate the eggs. They bury them in the ground, usually in volcanic type soil. They're an Australasian species. They bury the eggs in the ground at a certain depth so that they're incubated properly, so that they're warm. And then when the chicks hatch, they have no parents and they're flighted. Oh my God, you know, it's like magic. It's like plant the egg in the ground and then it comes out this full bird who just flies and is on his own. After this presentation, you should look up megapode. It is ridiculous. I had written some notes, but we're running out of time, but they use solar heat produced by volcanic action. When the chicks hatch, it takes them 2 to 3 days to work up to the surface through the dirt. They're hatched with all their feathers and they're 100% on their own. Outstanding. Those parents have it best. If I come back as a bird, I want to come back as a megapode. I think, oh yeah, these were my last ones. Semiprecocial development. An example of that would be, these are California gulls again. So I was saying that precocial means you hatch, you dry, you follow mom, and you eat on your own. Well, gulls are semiprecocial. which means that they hatch, they dry, they can leave the nest, but they often stay there for a few days, and mom and dad have to feed them. So they are dependent on the parents for food and warmth. And then semi-altricial, I was saying altricial was the robin, naked, blind, helpless. Raptors, the owls and the hawks, they are semi-altricial. When they hatch, they have a dense covering of down. They are able to thermoregulate to some degree on their own. Owls have their eyes closed for the first week or so, but these guys can't leave the nest. They need the parents for warmth, and they need the parents to be fed. So it's all these different stages. I love this chick. He's like, give me the foods now. Where are you, Mom? He's looking the wrong way. Okay, thank you for allowing me to go over while I talk about bird eggs. Before we go to questions, I'd just like to show the video. Is that okay, Rebecca? And look at this photo. Look at how many legs this avocet has. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's because all the babies except for this one are tucked up into mom's breast feathers so that she can keep them warm. I am going to stop sharing so that I can share something else. Oops. Oops. Oh, I had this problem the other day. Here we go. You guys are going to love this if I can get it to work. And then I say share. Share screen. Okay, Rebecca, can you see this? Okay, so this is an American robin who was brought into us, and then I candled the egg. And you should be able to see the young bird moving around inside. Isn't it amazing? And so you can also notice all the branching, vascularization. That's one way for us to tell if an egg is alive. Remember I was saying, so obviously the bird has a blood supply. It's breathing, but passively. Everything's passive in the egg. And so I can see his little head moving around, his beak, and the size of the bird and the size of the airspace helped us to determine you know, what stage of development he was at. So this is what we do. We candle the eggs or we float them. So I think, I know, isn't it amazing? So I'm not sure, there.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephanie.
You're welcome. I hope people enjoyed it.
I certainly did. I work at Wildcare and I learned a ton today. So I thought it was wonderful. I do have a couple of questions. One I can answer. Charlie and Phoebe are asking if we're going to do more of these presentations. And the answer is yes, we are going to be doing more of these. Next Thursday at the same time, we're going to be doing a presentation on why wildlife is important. So we're going to send you a follow-up email after this presentation, and you'll be able to sign up through that email. Or if you're interested now, you can email me at the email you already RSVP'd to this talk, and I will add you to the list for next week's lecture. A couple of people would like to know what the name of the book that you recommended in the beginning was.
Oh, yes. So let's see. So the name of the book is, it's called The Manual of Ornithology, and it's by Proctor and Noble. And I think it's probably $30. I absolutely love it. Another great book is Frank Gill's Ornithology. It's the sort of, to me, the classic ornithology text. It's dense, it has a lot in it. It's a really great resource.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions that they want to type in? If not, if you, oh, Francis says, thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. It says great. I'm sorry. Great presentation.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful.
If anyone thinks of questions after this presentation, which happens to me, I think it happens to the best of us. 2 days from now, I'll be in the shower and have a bird question. So if you do, you can email me at events@wildcarecapecod.org. I will pass on your questions to Stephanie, and at her convenience, she will roll out answers to those things. And we may post those questions and answers on our social media as well. I'm getting a couple more questions here. Yes, you will be able to rewatch this. We have recorded it. We will be adding it to our YouTube station. Let's see. Stephanie, Gina is asking, she says, we have 3 Swedish blue ducks. 2 are females. They are mating. We want to hatch some with an incubator, and we have the egg turner that fits inside. Will they raise their own if we leave them in their eggs? They don't seem to be sitting on the eggs, but they do cover the nest with straw.
So ducks are interesting. Ducks don't usually incubate the eggs until they've laid almost all of them. So I don't know about that species in particular, but like a mallard in the wild, for example, would lay 10 to 12 eggs. And what she would do is she would cover them up every day. And then right before the second to last egg is laid, she would start incubating. And so the reason for that is because they're precocial, so they all need to be at the same developmental stage when they hatch. So if the female were to start incubating them right away, and then keep laying, they would all be at different developmental stages. So I think this is normal. You would know how many eggs that species is supposed to lay, and then when they get close to that clutch size, she should start incubating. This is good.
Martha is asking, what is your take on moving a nest on a ceiling fan? Yikes.
A ceiling fan. Interesting. So I assume it's on a patio or something. Obviously outside because the birds are getting in. That's a tough one. Most birds, if it's chicks in the nest, then you might be able to move it a few feet away and maybe hang it near the fan, because if there's chicks in the nest, they'll be peeping and then the adults will hear them. The problem is eggs. Birds are focusing in on, they have landmarks for the nest, and then when we go and move it, they can't seem to find it. So there needs to be audible cues also, if that makes sense. So I'm hoping there's babies in the nest, because then honestly, you can probably move it a few feet and then watch for the parents. Excuse me. And thank you for not using the fan while the nest is on.
So a few people have asked how they can RSVP for future presentations. I did just add it to the chat, but the email to secure your spot for our next presentation is events@wildcarecapecod.org. And I think that's actually just about everything. If we missed anybody or you have questions that you want to email, please use that same email. We'll answer your questions at our earliest convenience. Stephanie, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining us. And again, this presentation was complimentary, but if you liked what you heard and you want to help us continue to save wildlife here on Cape Cod and continue to bring education to the masses, please think about making a donation today. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
It was great, Steph.
Thank you so much. Oh, Martha, it's so nice to see your face.
Oh, yeah, I'm in South Carolina, so.
It looks so warm. Are you the one with the baby birds on the fan or the nest?
It's my neighbor. It's my neighbor. They were trying on my fan, but I tried to discourage them, and they went to the neighbors.
Is it actually, is it babies, do you know, or is it just eggs?
No, it's five eggs. 5 eggs. Finches.
Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe she can let them hatch, and then after a couple of days, she can try moving it so they can hear the peeping.
Yeah.
I think that would be more.
I think they may have moved it.
Oh, bummer. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope they find it.
Yeah. That's the thing. I wondered about whether they find it.
They say that you can move a nest sometimes, what is it? 10, I think 2 to 10 inches a day.
Oh,
You know, it's not a lot. They could do little,
Yeah.
tiny little movements.
yeah.
It's so
But
hard.
and if they put it on the porch, maybe, you know, that might work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll mention it to them. I don't know where they put it, but
Oh, I hope
Okay.
not far. That's terrible.
I hope not. I hope not.
Aw. Thank you, Martha. We miss you.
Thank you. I miss you too. I'm leaving actually. I'll be back on the Cape next week. So
Yay.
Yeah.
Good.
all right, you take care. Thank you. This is
Bye.
wonderful.
I'm glad you
Yeah, we'll see
enjoyed
you
it.
again.
All right, I will.
I'll let you
Bye.
go. Bye.
No problem.